Hello and welcome to Nailed on FPL with John and Chris. Today we're going to try and answer a question on many managers' minds. Should I hold on to Salah or should I get rid of him? And if you are going to get rid of him, who are you going to replace him with? So we're going to talk about some of the options today. I'm going to pass you straight over to Chris. And so Chris, the Salah dilemma, what are your initial thoughts here? What's your kind of gut reaction telling you?
Oh, wow. I guess it depends, doesn't it? So we've obviously heard today that he's had a second positive test. So I'm not too sure myself on what that means yet. Of how many games that he's going to miss. I guess initial thoughts are that if he's going to miss 2 games, then I'll be probably making a transfer. If he's going to miss 1 game, then yeah, I'll be looking to hold on to him, use someone off my bench. Probably like Ayling at home to Arsenal, which isn't great, but that's probably what I'll look to do. It's frustrating, obviously, because there's other injuries from international break that lots of managers are experiencing. There's the Spurs dilemma as well, with their fixtures getting a lot harder. So this is a really difficult one. But this is what happens in an international break, I guess. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts, I guess.
So yeah, you touched on a few things there, and we should clarify around the testing situation for Salah. So he tested positive, and that was about over a week ago. But a second test today, being the 18th of November, was also positive. Now, the 10-day period where he can, so it will expire after 10 days, providing he hasn't had another positive test. So as it stands, he will miss the next game. But whether he misses the second game will depend on the results of the third test. If it comes back positive again, Salah will miss that. So basically, you're guaranteed to miss 1, but he will probably be back for the second. So it's a bit of a calculated risk. Yeah. I think based on how it currently is, I still like the idea of downgrading him to someone else because there's so many other good options at the moment. Bruno Fernandes has an amazing fixture. We're going to go into lots of the different options, but there's a few kind of really nice kind of textbook moves. And as you said as well, Chris, there's lots of reasons for players to consider transfers, not just Salah. Luckily, Chilwell was on the bench for England, which is positive. Robertson declared fit, which is another quite a common pick for people.
Yeah.
Lots of concerns, but Salah, I think, is the big one on the mind of most managers. So we're going to try and formulate the best exit strategy or work out whether it's best to keep him.
Yeah. Do we know when that third test is expected to be at all? I mean,
I'm not quite sure. I think there's a lot of really good sources on Twitter for that. Lots of the kind of medical, the injury physio experts, and Twitter's really going to be your best source for instant news. Also, the Reddit FPL will be the very first people to recirculate that kind of information, so worth keeping an eye on it.
Okay, then. So hypothetically, say we're going to look to transfer Salah out. If we look through the potential options, then so there's various premium options. You mentioned Bruno already. He's probably the standout at the moment when you look at some of the stats, and obviously the highest performing out of the premium midfielders that we're going to talk about. But obviously, it's, I guess, the easiest switch from a Liverpool perspective would be just to go straight to Mane. What are your thoughts on Mane, John? I know you're a big fan.
Well, yeah, I mean, famously at the beginning of the season, I picked Salah, you picked Mane, and you were rewarded by Salah scoring a hat-trick in the first game. So you learnt your lesson then. Will you learn it again? I mean, in this case, it is just Mane. And I think Mane on the pitch by himself is far less attractive than Salah on the pitch by himself. Mm. It is a nice, straightforward swap. We all have the funds for it if you're downgrading Salah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you look at anytime goal scorer odds, Mane, I believe, is a 6-4 shot, which is is that correct, actually, Chris? I think we had 40% implied chance.
Yeah.
Which is a bit low for someone as premium as that, especially at home. Leicester are a good team, but this is Liverpool at home, and that I was a bit surprised by that. I think Liverpool have a more of a mediocre run of fixtures, and there's a few more attractive teams out there in terms of fixtures. But again, if you're anticipating bringing Salah straight back, then you've also got to factor that into your planning, because a lot of us, when we bring in transfers, we're looking 6 weeks ahead, for example. And Salah's going to be back in 2 or 3. So we need to think about that. If you want a really nice 1 week punt, Bruno at home to West Brom. The reason why I like that is because if he blanks and Salah's available, you could just do a nice straight swap back to him. But if you want to stay with Bruno, he's got some really nice fixtures in front of him. He does have. There's one tough one in a couple of weeks, I believe. Is that
Man City at home? Yeah.
Man City. Okay, it's at home to Man City.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world being at home, but it's a very tough fixture. Sorry, I danced around a few options there. We should just put them all on the table. So you've got Bruno, you have Mane, which are definitely of the premium price point assets, are right up. But there's also the Man City assets, KDB and Sterling, and also Arsenal, Aubameyang with that turn of fixtures. A goal for Aubameyang it should also be considered.
Definitely. And I think this is where I've just got to look at some of the stats and. Those three you mentioned, Aubameyang, KDB, Sterling. I mean, they've not, on paper, they've not looked brilliant. On the eye test, they've not looked brilliant either. City as a whole aren't scoring a lot of goals. I think I can't remember how many goals they've scored this season, but it's obviously not a lot compared to previous seasons. Aubameyang's playing on the left and he's not looking great. And, I don't think the fixtures are that great, really, for the next three. I mean, Leeds away is not a terrible fixture, but then you've got Wolves at home, which is a difficult one against a tough defence. Then Tottenham away. So it's not really until game week 12 at home to Burnley when Arsenal pick up. So I think Aubameyang's an avoid for me at this stage. I think Man City, De Bruyne and Sterling, I mean, if that game week 10 was this week, it'd be a no-brainer. Because you've got really nice fixtures. From game week 10 for Man City, but then in the situation that we're in currently, if you're looking for a 1 or 2 week punt, it's probably not a Man City player that is the answer for that, because you may want to bring in a KDB or a Sterling from game week 10 anyway. So I
will just mention that, Chris. It's a weird one because even though Spurs away on paper is a really tough fixture, I mean, for Man City, the bookies have priced them as 5 to 6. So they're odds on to win against Spurs away, which means in terms of expected goals to go in, the bookies predict generally that this is going to be a win for City.
Yeah.
And if you go for an asset like KDB, it's likely he's going to be involved in some way according to the bookies. So even though the results in the past don't necessarily show this, there are some favourable stats. But then also, just to further complicate things, Sterling doesn't look very good to me.
No.
I'm not too. I believe the stats as well heavily favour KDB, which is really important when you're looking at players of this kind of price point. But KDB did have pens. He missed his last one with Aguero back in the squad potentially. You might see Aguero, who is consensus second in the pecking order, back on pens. So that also kind of downgrades KDB slightly, and it does put me off both of those assets a bit. But if you can get past that Spurs fixture, which my point being isn't as bad as it looks, because again, the Man City are still rated so incredibly high by the bookies, we just can't ignore that. And then after that, they've got a dream run of fixtures. So if you can last, you've got two really nice fixtures: at home to Fulham, straight after, and there's another one there as well, Chris. Home to.
It is at home to, home to Burnley and Fulham 10 and 11, and then away to Man U game week 12, and then at home to West Brom game week 13. So it's a pretty juicy run, isn't it, from game week 10?
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't be doing wrong if you were to pick a City asset and continue them throughout that run of fixtures. I think it's a perfectly justified move.
Yeah. But then I guess the worry is that Salah then returns, and he also potentially will go away to Brighton game week 10, at home to Wolves game week 11, which is a difficult game, and then away to Fulham game week 12, which is a decent fixture. So I mean, obviously the fixtures, lean towards City, but Salah and Mane not having one in your team is quite dangerous, I think.
Yeah, I've always felt Salah's so important, but one of the main reasons why, and especially I think one of the key justifications behind paying extra for these players, is their a really good captaincy choice. They're going to be the safest bet week after week. I mean, you see paying that extra money for the 2 times points, it almost amplifies that advantage Salah has above other players. And really, you want a replacement here that you can just stick that captaincy straight on for most weeks, definitely next week. So if you're going to someone like KDB, am I going to captain him away to Spurs? Am I going to captain Sterling away to Spurs? I don't feel great about that. I definitely don't feel good about that. So it pushes me back towards the Mane and Bruno being the kind of top tier options at that higher price point for me.
Yeah, and it's a good point, and because I mean, if you looked at it on paper, you think, right, a City player would be fantastic captaincy options, 10, 11 and 13. But I mean, knowing Pep Guardiola's team selections in the past, they're always throw up a little bit of a surprise, and especially in like those easier home games, he tends to just make some crazy rotation and plays a bit of a weaker side, especially with Champions League probably being in between those games as well. So that's always a difficult one as well. You could captain KDB just to find him on the bench and come on for the last 7 minutes. But lots to think about. And that's sort of the premium players then. So if you had to pick one out of those 5, you mentioned, Bruno and Mane. Is it Bruno for you?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think at home to West Brom is going to be about one of the easiest fixtures in the league you're going to get this season.
Yeah.
Bruno should be on penalties. And he's always dangerous as well. We know that he's a good chance of assisting other players and he likes to take lots of shots. I just see too much upside to Bruno because he's a nice, easy captaincy option and has good fixtures ahead, which gives me a bit of flexibility. For me, it's Bruno. And what about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's... I think before this discussion, it probably was Bruno as well. But now I've reminded myself of the City fixtures. It's between KDB and Bruno. But
the question is though, Chris, who do you captain if you pick KDB in your squad? Like, who's your next best? Because my vice is currently on Grealish, and I was considering it's between him and Ziyech as a vice captain. And that if I had to captain one of those 2, I'm not sure if I feel great about it. So you might be actually captaining KDB away to Spurs, and that's...
No, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably have to put on like a Calvert-Lewin away to Fulham or something like that, which it's not terrible. Or bite the bullet, and I'd probably go for Kane if I obviously kept the Spurs assets in.
7-4 to score any time, so about 35-36% chance of scoring.
It's not great, but Spurs are always good for getting a penalty.
That's all you remember, though, especially when it's against Arsenal.
Yeah, but City tend to give a lot of penalties away as well. So it'd be between Kane and Calvert-Lewin for me, and Ziyech.
You don't feel great about that.
No, I don't look.
You're going to be on Bruno. I think it's concluded. Yeah. Well, to be fair though, maybe captaining KDB isn't a terrible option as it looks on paper.
Yeah.
But I think that's, for me, there's something really clean about picking Bruno and Mane. Why not? I mean, at home to Leicester, Mane's still a good chance of being involved with the goals.
There is, but then I'm a little bit worried now that Liverpool got all these injuries. Trent's injured, Gomez is out for a long time, Van Dijk, obviously we already know, is out for a long time. Robertson may or may not be a doubt. Obviously, he started tonight. Is that a little bit of a worry that Liverpool aren't as good going forward because of the amount of attacking potential that the likes of Trent and even those centre backs actually provide with their like long diagonal passes and stuff like that? I think.
Yeah. Well, Milner isn't the worst replacement. I mean, he is certainly still pretty sound defensively and pretty dangerous moving forward. If their defense is a bit weaker, I mean, they've got some viable replacements there, but definitely, you can't really, the likes of Van Dijk is very tricky to replace. But okay, if they're a bit weaker at the back, you might just see a more aggressive attacking style of football from Liverpool in response to it, especially if they start conceding goals. So it's really hard to say, but they're still an incredibly strong team. And I still think, they're going to be a good option.
Yeah.
But you were touching on some of the kind of more mid-priced replacements. So when we look at Salah, we're talking about these kind of easy premium swaps at a similar price level. But if we duck down towards the mid-price bracket where you might want to free up funds elsewhere for if you're considering a second transfer or upgrading a striker, for example, we do have some options in that mid-bracket. So Grealish, we talked about briefly. Grealish, Ziyech, and also Zaha should still be on the table. Any others?
Yeah, and I think there's also Havertz as well. If you wanted to contest how good Ziyech looks, I wouldn't want to do that personally. And then a little punt, I guess, is Diego Jota, who's obviously going to come in. Obviously, he's been playing alongside Salah recently, but he's in a bit of a very good run of goal scoring form at the moment, isn't he, as well, for the international team and for Liverpool, albeit in some of the sort of lesser Champions League games as well. But I mean, it could be a good option.
Yeah, it would be kind of, in terms of a 1 week punt, it seems like it would be an inspired transfer if he comes on and bangs in a couple, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me. My question there is just when Salah comes back, he still doesn't look like he's nailed on. He's going to be, I mean, after all, we're called the Nailed On podcast, Chris. We shouldn't be endorsing players like this. But no, he is, I mean, he should be considered because of his price point as a short-term punt, especially if, I'm kind of trying to justify it in my head, but when Salah comes back, if he's not starting, then I'm not going to be happy. So yeah, he's an interesting one. If for the gamblers amongst us, which I'm sure there are, he could work in the short term.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So out of those other options then, I think the two that stand out for me is Grealish and Ziyech. So I've got Ziyech in my team at the moment. John, I believe you've got both of these players in your team at the moment. Their stats look really good, really, really good, especially, Grealish, I mean, like 10 touches in the box per game, 3.1 shots per game, creating lots of chances, goals and assists, good for bonus points as well. And key point is he is playing, 90 minutes in every single game so far this season. And fixtures as well, John. Villa have got the best fixtures in the league, I believe, over the next 5.
On paper, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, what are your thoughts here in making such a significant downgrade from Salah to Grealish? I mean, if you're making one transfer, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. You should be prioritising someone like a Bruno or a KDB or Mane. But if you're looking for, to enable funds to improve a striker or something like that, it's not a bad shout.
Yeah, it's a situation that some managers might find themselves in, so we should definitely reference it. And these are really attractive options. One thing I would say is they don't have the same kind of captaincy potential as we might expect for some of the other replacements we've talked about. But they should be. These are the kind of players that within a few weeks might be considered essential if Grealish keeps returning points the way he is at his price point, and if Ziyech continues this amazing introduction to the Premiership, then he will be in everyone's team. His ownership was, last week it was 10%. When you return all those points, it's now going to be a lot higher. Both those players, brilliant. I will just say that they're both fantastic, and no disrespect to Aston Villa, but when you look at the bookies odds, Aston Villa on paper have the better fixture. They're at home to Brighton, and I believe the bookies have priced them up at around 13-10 to win that fixture. So again, that's not certainly not odds on. If anything, it's less likely that, according to the bookies, it's less likely that they will draw or lose than actually win the fixture. Whereas if you look at Chelsea away to Newcastle, so on paper, again, an away fixture to a similar standard team to Brighton would be worse. However, the bookies have priced up Chelsea as 1-2, a heavy favourite, and the kind of game that you could see, you're more likely to see a large volume of goals go in. And that's why I like Ziyech, because not only does he assist them, he does. He's going to turn up on the score sheet as well. So from time to time. So I'm
takes a lot of set pieces as well, doesn't he?
For me.
Yeah, he's he's just saying that he takes a lot of the set pieces as well. From what I saw the last 2 games that he's played, I guess to counteract that argument, which I do agree with. You've obviously got Grealish, he is the key player for Villa, isn't he? He will play 90 minutes every single game. He takes some of the set pieces as well, heavily involved in everything they do. Ziyech will be fairly similar in terms of being involved while he's on the pitch, but I think Pulisic is probably going to be back, or at least back very soon. Havertz is obviously back from self-isolating as well, so there's a lot of options there for Lampard to rotate, and obviously with Champions League still ongoing, there's a little bit of a danger there for Ziyech that he might start games, but then if the game's won after 50, 60 minutes, he could, it'd be perfectly reasonable for him to get substituted, where you won't see that happen with Grealish. I think even if we've seen the games where they've been winning by a high margin against Arsenal and Liverpool, and he still stays on the pitch.
It's a good point, because if you have a really weak bench, or a bench where you have players who are injured or not playing, then I think that definitely favours Grealish more, a much safer staple return of points. If you want more of an exciting upside, for me, I always refer to it as the kind of like more of a spicy gamble. Ziyech is the one for me. It's kind of quite a situational one. I think we've actually picked different things in this occasion, and it does show in our teams. Very similar teams typically, but this week it's a bit different.
Yeah, well, obviously we've both got Ziyech. I really want Grealish. You've got Grealish, but I think those are the two, aren't they, John? Out of those five in that mid-tier bracket, a fairly decent downgrade from Salah if you're looking to upgrade your team elsewhere. As we said, if you're not looking to upgrade your team elsewhere, you should be probably looking at Bruno or Mane or one of the City assets.
I think beyond those options, it's going to be some more kind of questionable decisions. So sticking within those parameters, I particularly like the one transfer kind of premium sideway move to someone like Bruno, Mane. Aubameyang's probably in third for me. I like him as a bit of a differential. I don't want to go into him too much, because that's I think I prefer the other two. But I think if you stick with one of those options, you're going to be in a good place. So best of luck to all the FPL managers making that transfer this week.
Good luck, guys. Cheers.
See you later.